I had one guy, the captain of the family I was in. He called me and says, "Can you meet me in 20 minutes?" So sure enough, I called up the FBI guy and I told him, I said, "Look, I got a call down. I don't know what's going to happen." So he took the call. He said, "Make sure you call me immediately. Get back home. I don't care what time it is. I'll be waiting for you." I said, "Okay," but I was scared. I went to the house, and of course, his cousin said, "What's going on?" My cousin called me, told me, "You got to meet him here. You all right?" And she knew who he was. He's a killer. I says, "Yeah, I guess so." So him and his father come in, and they're kind of cold to me a little bit. I said hello, and then we left. So now I'm getting into the car with them,
Oh
and
man,
yeah,
I'm
and
getting
this is
goosebumps. How did you find me? Because y'all emailed me out of the blue. I mean, I thought it was a prank at first.
I'm not sure about how that was all found. It was through a friend of mine, William.
Hmm.
Uh, so, and then I looked at a couple of the things that you've done and stuff like that, and I was like, wow, I like them, you know?
I'll take it.
Yeah,
Flattery works
yeah.
with me. Okay.
Okay.
Um, but why reach out to anyone? I know I don't want to spoil anything, and we'll get to this in a minute. But you're in hiding right now, so why suddenly be like, I want to go on a podcast and let everyone know what's going on there?
It's really not all of a sudden. I've been trying to sue the government for what they did to me for since I've left, since I got out of prison. Uh, and it's not so much. It's just about me trying to. I guess you could say I'm like an FBI whistleblower. I want to just kind of tell the truth, at least from the way what happened to me about what the FBI, what they really are.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and we'll get to what happened in a bit here, but we'll warm them up. So we'll tease him with that one. Um, you were born into a mob family,
That's
right?
correct. Yes,
Yeah.
on
So
both
what did your
sides.
father do on both sides? Okay. So your mom was, I guess, well, she was a mob daughter then. I guess that's how that works, right?
Actually, no. Believe it or not, I'll tell you my mother's side of it first this way because it's a little bit more complicated. I guess you heard of Al Capone.
I guess I have. Yeah. I
Okay.
think if you haven't, that's a you problem at this point, right? He's a very well known guy.
So anyway, most of my family came from Italy, as you could well imagine, but they moved to a part of Pennsylvania when they first came here. Well, my grandmother's sister's husband's brother was involved with Al Capone. So if you
Oh
can
wow.
follow me, that yeah, we actually have
Yeah,
pictures
that's a
of
bit.
him.
It's
Yeah,
a bit of the.
that's why I
Yeah.
wanted to tell you this first because it's a lot. It's a little bit more difficult. Well, anyway,
Sure.
he was doing the bootlegging back in those days with the alcohol prohibition, all of that stuff. But one day they killed him, and so my his brother, which is my grandmother's sister's husband, used to be a barber in a barber shop. He got the brother bought him the business. They came to him and they said they want the money. So he didn't really know anything about it. He wasn't involved in that. He goes, "I don't know anything about it." And they said, "Well, look, we're going to come here tomorrow and you better have the money. We're going to kill you." So the next day, they all got everything together to ready to move. They went to the barber shop, and my uncle, I guess I call him my uncle, he killed them. He shot them. So he
Wow.
ran.
Oh, he killed them instead of them killing him. He was just like, well, I'm moving anyway.
Yeah, you basically, if you're going to kill somebody, you don't want to give them advance notice.
Yeah. That makes sense. But from an extortion perspective, it's usually a bluff and you just want the money. So you have to kind of balance it. Like maybe you don't tell them you're going to kill them. Maybe just say you're going to do something really bad unless they give you the money. But these were maybe, they didn't think that far. They thought he's a barber. He's not going to do anything. And then he did.
Right, that's exactly right. So they packed up everything and they moved from Pennsylvania to a town called Mamaroneck, New York. And then from Mamaroneck, New York, they moved to a town where I was born, New Rochelle, New York. And so my uncle went back into this business, Bart, cutting hair again. Well, 20 years later, somebody came and shot him. Yeah,
Wow.
it
Because
was
of
one
the
of yeah.
previous beef.
But they didn't kill him. They shot him in the finger, and the blood went squirting. And but it was all in the papers that it was because of the old Al Capone days. It was
Wow.
payback.
20 years. I mean, that's a
Yep.
long time to wait for so they just took forever to find him, I guess.
Yeah. Because don't forget too, back in those days, there weren't like the resources now. You get on a computer, you get a private eye, records. There's more things, and don't forget too, the mafia was a lot stronger back in those days as well.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? So now, well, I mean, I guess I don't know anything much about it now, but it seems like, yeah, you can't really just Google somebody and be like, aha, there's a guy with the same barbershop and the same name.
Right.
He's got a business license in New Rochelle now. And let's
Hmm.
go have a look.
That's
They just
correct.
have to wait until someone's like, remember that story about those guys? Da, 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 there's a guy who's working here in New Rochelle, and he kind of looks like maybe he just said he just moved here a few years ago. I mean, how do you even find someone back then? I guess you probably don't know the answer to that either. I
No,
mean, that's tough.
but that's why it took so long. But that's goes
Yeah.
to show you how long they could hold a grudge.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that's
I
scary.
had felt bad for my. His name was Joe too, believe it or not, and we used to call him Giuseppe. But he used to walk the streets. He started getting Alzheimer's, and I used to walk up to him and I say, "Hey, Uncle Joe, how are you?" And he got scared because he thought they were still coming to get him.
Oh, that's terrible. Yeah, that's terrible. Because he assumed that other people, because he didn't recognize you. So he thought, "Oh, it's them threatening me
Yep.
by." Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's terrible. But on the other hand, he didn't die by getting shot. So they
No.
shot his finger off and they were like, "This is we scared him, that's the end." Or they
Yeah.
just
I
that's
guess with
weird.
the blood, they just wanted to. They shot him quick and ran. And it was in the newspapers in New Rochelle, I guess the Times or whatever it was back in the newspapers back then. I think my cousin still has the articles.
It seems weird to spend 20 years finding someone, shoot their finger off and be like, "Well, my work here is done." That's
You know,
what's the point of that?
if you go back and you look at a lot of mob hits, a lot of them were really they were messed up. A lot
Yeah,
of sometimes they
sloppy.
couldn't even shoot straight. Uh, I guess because when you want to do it the spur of the moment. I mean, look how many times it took to shoot Joe Gallo. Uh, even there was another guy called from the Lucchese crime family. They called him Gas Pipe. They didn't even shoot him and kill him. He ducked under the car. He got out. He ran away. I mean,
It's like poorly planned. Not that I'm complaining. I mean, I'm not trying to, I'm not voting for anybody to get murdered, but it just seems like it's, it can't, like I've never done it, but it can't be that hard when you've got a whole team of people and you're getting the jump on somebody to like get a couple shots in or like block their escape route or something like that. I guess. I don't know I don't know what I'm talking about, but it seems like there's a lot of sloppy mob hits.
well, I mean, the Paul Castellano went down pretty smooth. Or if you're gonna
Yeah.
kill your best friend, it's pretty easy because he don't think you're gonna shoot him.
Right. Yeah. You could put a couple whiskeys in him and invite him over to your house and then he falls asleep and that's the end of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the way it always happens. It's always your best friend that's gonna come and get you because they know they can get you easily that way.
Oh, that's such a terrible. Yeah. I was talking with Sammy the Bull a couple months ago and he was saying it's horrible because you have to kill everyone that you love because you're the one they pick to go after those people because they'll let you into the house when it's only them alone and then
Of
have
course.
a bunch of wine and let you stay really late until everyone goes to sleep. Like that's so they pick you for that. And he's like, it's awful
Of
for
course.
that reason.
Well, that's how one of the kids in the guys on Bath Avenue in Brooklyn, he pushed Anthony Spiro, and then his own friends had to go there and kill him. I mean, it's a lot harder when you know they're coming for you and then you're ready for it. It's almost like how they tell you a woman who's more prone to be raped if she doesn't know how to defend herself. So you take precautions, and some girls take martial arts or they try to carry mace with them and hold it in their hand, anything. And so make it more difficult for a criminal.
Yeah. 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 So they know that you're not going to have any defenses up. Man, it's
That's
just such a
correct.
crazy way to live.
Yeah.
Just such a crazy way
Well,
to
look at
live.
the way I have to live. I'm always
Well,
looking over my
yeah.
shoulder. I mean, where I'm
Yeah.
living in the place I'm at now, I could pretty much see what's going on and who might stand out in the crowd, so to speak.
Yeah, well, I definitely want to ask more about that towards the end of the show here as well. But okay, so you're born into a mob family on both sides. So your mom was, so was she like a mob granddaughter then? I guess at that point, or
She just we knew about it, but everybody knew that it was a big Italian thing, and basically back in those days, they were very well respected or at least feared. So my mom really didn't want no part, have me part of it because that's what she told my father. My father's family, of course, was involved and my grandmother, too, my father's mother, her family was involved in it as well, and that's how my father got started. But she, like many other mothers do, don't want their sons to get involved. And believe it or not, I really wasn't going to be involved. I'm going to make you laugh, Jordan, but I was going to be a postman.
Really?
Yeah, but
That's
my uncle and two cousins, two uncles and one cousin was a postman. So I was going to follow that and just live a normal life.
that is the opposite of my that is if I had to pick one job that is the opposite of gangster or hitman, it's probably mailman because it's like stable government job. The most dangerous thing in your job is like dogs and people who are not paying attention when they're driving,
That's
or
correct.
like the amount of time you spend on the road. And and then it's like, well, now I'm actually just gonna go and join the mafia. What did your father do in the mafia? I know you have to like earn and everything. What did he do?
He started out like with I call him my uncle. He was like a cousin of mine, but he started out with in the card games, collecting money, and that kind of stuff. And he was very. I guess my father was very mean when he wanted to be. He was a Gemini, so he was a true Gemini. Yeah, but he was a good getaway driver. He actually avoided. They tried to rob him after a card game, and he was able to avoid that.
Wow.
Yeah, my cousin actually showed me the road they took, and he showed me what he did back in those
Wow.
days. Yeah, uh, but he learned from the ranks, and that was it. And then of course he started hijacking trucks and things like that.
So how did he end up getting you into it? If you were going to be a postman, how did he convince your mom, or how did it end up that you did not do that?
He never convinced my mom, but what he did was I saved like I said $1,000, and of course when you're young you want to buy a car, you know, and
Yeah.
so he said to me, he says, "You want that money to make money for you?" I said, "Yeah,
Mm.
Dad." Well, that's when I started loan sharking,
Ah,
and
okay.
yeah, and back in those days, my father didn't take the new way to if you're going to loan shark today is if you're going to say, I'll just use this for if you want to give somebody $1,000, make sure they have enough collateral to give you where it's at least $2,000. So that this way, if they ever pay you, you don't have to break their legs anymore or beat them up. You just tell them, okay, you don't have to pay me. I just take the thing that you gave me that's worth the other 1,000. I'll cash it in. That's it. That's
Right. So
the
you take like a
new way.
laptop or something. Right.
Something that's
Yeah.
worth I can get the money without having to do violence anymore. Because let's face it, if I hurt the guy, he can't work. Or I get arrested again. And even if he signs a promissory note, the court just says, yeah, he owes you the money, but you still don't get the money if you don't have it.
Right. Right. Yeah. Judgment proof is what we call that. You can sue somebody for $1 million and win, but if they're homeless, they're not giving you anything.
Exactly. So, but my father had still taught me the old ways. And of course, I had to go to certain places when I started earning my own money. And then, of course, I helped my father out with his. And basically, I hung around with a group of guys who used to be called the Third Street guys, or the Third Street boys. Every young guy kind of gets into a group, a gang, or a club, or whatever. And so they kind of knew we were getting into a lot of fights back then and stuff. And they knew that I would beat them up, and my father would bail me out if that was the case. And so basically, everybody paid. That's how I got started.
How do you even find people that need money, or do they just go, "Oh, man, I really need money, so I don't have a choice. I got to find Joe Barone."
Trust me, they find you because they can't go nowhere else. They can't go to the bank. They tried every other route. They probably went to their own family members, and they can't even do that as well.
Oh, yeah, that
Family,
makes sense.
yeah, some of their family members don't even trust them. Excuse me.
How do people get jobs in the mob? Like your dad's came to you and said, "Hey, do you want to get your money working for you?" But later on, do you kind of come up with your own idea for a racket? Like, "Oh, hey, I got this idea where, my friend runs a store, and if we run fake transactions on credit cards and we take some of the cash out and we say we sold the luggage, we can make like an extra $1,000 a week." Is it kind of like that?
Okay, anything that can generate money for the mafia is in. Of
Okay.
course, now don't get me wrong. There's going to be a lot of guys that are like, especially the old timers, are going to shine down on you. Like here, for instance, you might know that they say there's no drugs. They don't want to deal anything with drugs. That's not true. As long as I bring in them an envelope, they don't care what I'm doing. They don't ask no questions. They're like, but, and if something happens to me and I get arrested, and then they say, didn't you know he was doing this? He wasn't bringing you an envelope. I didn't know. He told me he was doing something else, they'll say, to stick up for themselves. But anything that can make money, whether it be legal, illegal, they're in. Look, they used to steal Viagra pills and then sell them on the street. Fake credit cards they can make up. whatever it takes, as long as they not have to spend their own money, if they have any, that's it. Because let's face it, most of the wise guys are broke today.
Yeah, yeah, that's one thing I've noticed doing a lot of these interviews is like no one's like, "Well, I'm rich now and I retired." They're all like, "Yeah, I went to prison and now I don't have any money." I'm like, "Weren't you making $6 million in the '90s? How are you broke?" And it's yeah, well, yeah, maybe you'll answer that.
You get a guy like Michael Francis. I don't know nothing about him really, except what he tells you and stuff like that. He was making almost like $9 million a week or whatever it was with the gas business. Now he was giving big money to these people, and it still wasn't even good enough for them. They tried to scare him so that this way, he could be like, "Hey, I'm not gonna, I'm gonna make sure my loyalty is here." I mean, his loyalty was always there. But the thing is, though all those people with the money he was giving them, where's their money?
Yeah,
He was giving Carmine, I think, like $2 million a week or something like that, or even more. Where was his
Car-
money? Carmine
Carmine,
is
tell
the
us who that is.
snake. Yeah, that's the Carmine the Snake Persico.
Uh-huh. So he
Yeah,
was the head of the crime of
uh,
a crime family?
Colombo family back in then. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, because for people listening, they're probably like, I don't know who that is, right? So we got
yeah.
to keep that in mind.
I,
And for me, it all blends together. I've heard Carmine before because Sammy talked about it a lot, but even then, it's like, okay, there's 5 families, but there's more than 5, but also there's different bosses, and then some of them get killed, so then they change, and so yeah, it gets a little confusing if you're not in the business.
and it's always changing, and it's like anything else. I don't know everybody there is. Like,
Yeah,
I don't. And Sammy, as well known as he is, he probably didn't even know everybody.
sure. Yeah,
Uh, but
yeah.
he
I'm thinking.
was.
I'm thinking it makes sense that anything that generates money is in. So my question is then, if I'm generating money off an idea that I have, and it doesn't require violence or any sort of enforcement, why do I need the mafia for that? Right? Like, why does somebody who's skimming gas money or whatever it was that Francis was doing, why does he need the mafia for that? Or is it just he doesn't have a choice because he's getting extorted essentially?
Basically, I think in Michael's situation, he was already a gangster, I believe. So anything he earns now really is part of what he's a part of. So he has no choice but to kick in and to do it, even though he came up with the whole thing himself. If you're like a guy like yourself and you come up with it, well, why would you have to go to the mob? The only time you would have to go to the mob is if you need what they call there's an old movie called Fist with Sylvester Stallone, and sometimes you need a little what they call push, and sometimes you need them to get involved, like in unions, like strike breakers back in those days, and you would need it to get an advancement in certain places. Like here, I got a deal. I could buy a couple of houses, but the banks are gonna give me a hard time with loans. So maybe I need a loan from the wise guys till I sell a house. But now all of a sudden they become your partner, and that's hard to get out of.
Right. Okay. So if I'm in the mob with Michael Francis and I need a bunch of money, I say, "Hey, aren't you making $9 million a week from this gas thing? I'll buy a bunch of properties, but I need you to finance them." And then I can't get away from it once I'm on my own 2 feet. He's like, "Well, wait a minute. I'm the one that helped you get on your own 2 feet. You're not cutting me out now."
Right. Well, it's like getting famous. Like say you hit the lotto, all of a sudden you got all different people asking you for, hey, my family's hurting, or I got an idea, and people start coming to you when you got the money.
Sure. Yeah,
You
that
know,
makes
or,
sense.
or if you got power, and when you're in
Okay.
the mob, usually you have a lot of power. At
I'm
least it's the
thinking
way it
what I
used to
would
be.
Yeah, I'm thinking what I would do if I was in the mob, right? And it's the only thing I mean, I'm not, so I'm short on ideas, but I buy a lot of advertising for the Jordan Harbinger show on other podcasts. In fact, a lot of people listening right now are like, "Oh, I heard an ad for you on this show about crime or this show about politics." So it's very expensive to advertise, as I'm sure you can guess. But I think if I was in the mafia, I could just be like, "Hey, instead of me paying for these ads, you're going to run an ad for me on your show and you're going to do it for free." And if they're like, "Why would I do that?" I'm like, "Because I know where you live and I know a lot of other people that you don't want them to know where you live. So just run a couple ads for me for free. It's not going to hurt you. You don't have to do anything. You're not losing money. I'm just not giving you the money because I don't want to." And then they would be like, "Fine, if you're not going to break my legs, then I'll run an ad for you." And it'd save me a couple $1 million a year. But then now I have to kick that money back to the guys who were going to maybe enforce that particular threat, right?
Yes, but also there's a flip side to the coin too. If somebody's going to be selling you, if you're making a deal with somebody to sell some of your stuff, but basically they're going to make money off of it too. So in other words, you're really working with them now. It's just because you ain't coming up with no money up front. Okay, so they're helping you out, but at the same time, so instead of making $10,000 a year, I'm just throwing numbers out there on your stuff, they're gonna make 20. So now you split the difference between the 20. So now you get 5,000 extra. That's not a big
Right.
deal. I mean, it's about helping people. Here, look, I had to collect money one time for a friend of mine. This guy owed him $6,000. So I told him, I said, look, I says, let me know a little bit about the guy. I says, and I'll get the money for you because I don't want to drive all the way out to Pennsylvania to get it. So he told me when. I said, I'll only charge you 1,800, which is a third. I made a phone call to the guy and I told him a few things that I needed to tell him. And he understood that I was a friend and that I knew a little bit too much about him. Well, the next morning, I got a phone call from my friend to come down and pick up the money because the guy Western United it to him that morning. And see, that is a different tactic. He didn't have anything I could do to try to make him earn. He didn't own a club or a bar or anything like that. So those things work in certain situations, just like what you're saying. I'm your partner almost in a way. You're going to earn money here. So why not?
Yeah, okay, that makes it. Well, the reason why not is because then you can't get away from it. But I guess people aren't thinking about that in the moment, right?
Well,
And
it's always about the money.
yeah,
Everybody's hungry for the money.
right, right. And if you're born into it and you're already a gangster, you're already in anyway. So what's the difference if you get in a little bit deeper? I mean, it's you're not you can't just not associate if you're.
No,
I mean, it's too hard.
no.
Um, so your father was Genovese mafia would associate, and the FBI documents that I looked at that you sent me said could he can associate with or you as a result of your dad being Genovese can associate with Genovese, Bonanno, Lucchese, and La Cosa Nostra. LCN is La Cosa Nostra, right? They use that abbreviation a lot, and okay, and that's just like a mafia term in general for the Italian mafia. Okay,
Right.
all right, and
My father was in a Genovese family. And I guess I was supposed to go into that family as well. After he was, after they found him dead and everything like that too, it's just that, well, before that, he was able to, yeah, he knew people in the Lucchese family. He knew people in the Bonanno family. He knew a lot of people. Matter of fact, I guess you're familiar with the garment district in New York City.
yeah, they sort of a
It's
little
it's
bit.
it's a thing where all the clothes, everything get a lot. It's mainly run by the Gambino family, but for some reason there was some kind of problems going on there with people getting their money. Well, they called my father in, and there's I believe three fractions. I don't know if it was Lucchese, Gambino, and I don't know who else was the other one in there. But because my father knew everybody, and they all vouched for my father to make sure that everything they knew him, they liked him, and they trusted him to make sure everybody got what they were supposed to get. That's what he did because he was well liked. So basically, I knew different people from different families as well too, and so I was able to talk to whoever I had to talk to too.
I know your world sort of got turned upside down in it says January 12th, 1992. Your father was killed by somebody. I mean, do we know that story? What happened there?
My father had to go on the lam. He had wound up killing for the mob. This guy Victor Maturo, I believe his last name was. He was a gangster, and supposedly they had suspicions that he was working with the FBI, and it was true. He was working with the FBI. So my father was last seen with him going to his house with some other guy, and then of course the next day they found the guy hanging. And they said that it was suicide, but it wasn't suicide. They just made it look like that. Well, they wanted to, I believe, get my father for that murder and maybe a couple more.
Hmm.
So my father
Couple
got,
more murders.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my father, I think, had about four bodies under his belt. I think, that I know of.
That you know of. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, he got tipped off that they were looking to come down and give him and arrest him, pinch him, and he took off on the lam. And so then he gave me instructions what to do, where the places to pick up money and this and that, and that's what I did.
Oh, okay. Okay. Gotcha. So he's like calling you from a payphone, and he's like, leave an envelope full of cash at Johnny's bar and tell him that Mike's gonna come in and get it, and then some other guy comes in and gets the cash for him and drops it off because he can't like go around using a credit card or like withdrawing from a Chase bank down where he's staying, right? He needs
No, I
cash to
mean,
survive.
it was actually trucking companies basically and stuff like that that he was controlling and taking care of. Basically,
Okay.
his job was to make sure that no other wise guys came in, took over the trucking company,
Ah, because he's
and
right. So
that's
he's
it.
on the run and he's got to protect the thing that's earning for him because somebody else can just do it since he can't be around to call shots.
Right. The only
Yeah,
problem
interesting.
is when I went to go collect the money, I didn't know who to kick it up to, and nobody came to see me until one day I met the guy. And the guy says, "Listen, we can't meet no more," and that's it. That means somebody else, finally the higher ups took the businesses, and that was it.
Ah, okay. So what happened to your dad then? He was on the run. Why get rid of him?
He was still on the lam. Matter of fact, he was with another wise guy someplace in, I guess it was Honduras. And I don't know. I guess they got wind that he was there. I don't know why. It was my impression that the wise guys killed him. Maybe as a precaution. It's my intention now that I think the FBI had him killed and leaked where he was to the mafia because and that he could expose them because don't forget he knew a lot of judges, he knew a lot of politicians as far as trying to get me out of trouble and stuff like that. So he was, you know, I can maybe explain it better for the audience and for you, Jordan, as well. Like John Gotti had his connections and Sammy the Bull had his. My father had his, just like I had mine. People have different crews. Some people know don't. In other words, nobody knows everything that everybody else has. Some things you keep quiet. And so my father would. You could almost actually see that movie in The Godfather. Remember where they wanted to use all his political connections to get the drug business going?
Sort of, yeah. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen it, but yeah.
But he didn't want to do that. Well, same thing like my father. Certain things and certain people that he knew he kept away because they were his own connections. You know, and there's like same with me. I had certain things that nobody knows about, but I kept it quiet. Why did I got to tell them everything?
Yeah,
you know,
good point. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
because they
that
take it
makes
from you.
sense.
Yeah, they'll take it from you. Listen, most people get killed in the mafia because they want what you have. There ain't no real brotherhood there. They use an excuse. Oh, he was no good. We got word he was bad. All kinds of different excuses. You know.
Right, of course. And so if you want to do something that earns in the mafia, you have to make damn sure that they can't replace you easily. Right?
Right.
Because
Well,
they
like
will otherwise. Like, why give you the money if you've already set it up and they don't need you anymore? They can just get rid of you and take so the podcasting example is not really that bad because nobody else can do this show. So right, so they would be like, well, don't
that's
touch
right.
Jordan because nobody else is going to do
Right.
this. Nobody else is
Exactly.
going to do mediocre interviews, right? Like
Eh,
we got to keep them around. All right.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you listen to Michael Francis, he even tells you the story himself too. He didn't tell them everybody who he knew and who his partners was in the gas business. He was a smart man. He knew what he was doing. But yet they still wanted to intimidate him. All the money he was giving him, they still wanted to intimidate him. Because you know why? And you know this too. Money buys power. So let's say, hey Jordan, you're not going to sell out for $1 million, right? Okay. Would you sell it for five? Well, wait a minute. Whole five's a lot different than a million, you know?
Right. Yeah. Right. I guess. And if you're making that kind of money, like if not 9 million bucks a week, you have to keep intimidating that person because otherwise, what if he starts donating to politicians and the police chief, and then he's close with the commissioner and the FBI, and he's like, okay, look, man, I got these guys. They're looking over my shoulder. You're going to have to arrest this whole bunch of these crime family guys to get me away from them, and I'll keep you in the office. But if you're really scared of those guys, you're just going to be like, you know what? I don't want to rock the boat because I'm going to end up getting killed. So I'm not going to do any of that.
Always remember this, and this is just the truth. The facade is that they're together. They're not together. It looks like they're together, but it's greed. It's always about the power and the money, and that's it. And I know
That
I
makes
lived it.
sense.
Yeah, I lived
Yeah.
it, so I know.
It makes sense. You see a lot of young people, especially, and I guess older people, they really romanticize the mafia. Like, oh man, it's different now that they had the code of honor and all this stuff. But when you really look at all the stories from all these folks, they're always getting murdered by their cousins, brothers, or families, or other things like that. They end up turning on each other all the time, and also they're really there's only honor up until it's like really inconvenient or more profitable to screw over somebody.
Well, here, I'll give you a perfect example. When I was younger, I got into a problem at some party at a house. I made one phone. There was about four or five guys that were going to jump us or something like that, me and one of my friends. So my friend says, make the call, Joe. I made a call. I had 2 carloads of guys coming over there. It was about 15 guys. Now, they left because the girl told them, this guy knows some people. You better get out of here. Anyway, my friend said, don't worry about it. You better be safe than sorry. Let's go. And I left with them. But there's power in that. It makes you feel good that you can make a phone call and get somebody to back you up. You think that they're doing it because they love you. I mean, these guys just love to fight. You know what I mean? But you think it's like, wow, man, you can't thank them enough. And they saved you in a way.
Right.
So, it feels really good, and the town talks about it for like a couple of days and, but it's in the mafia, it's almost like that. But at the same time, they don't really care.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just profit and self-aggrandizement, and then beyond that, it's like, the rest of it's just lip service. Yeah, from the
What
sound
could
of
you
it.
listen? The mafia didn't start off like that. You know how the mafia started, right?
Not really, because I only hear, you hear like the romanticized version, but I all I know is a little bit about, in Sicily. You know what? Why don't you tell it? I'm just gonna ruin it.
My friend Jerry Chili, he was a captain in a Bonanno family, told me exactly what mafia stood for, the letters, and and all of that stuff. But I forgot because after I was locked up for a while, I wound up getting PTSD and stuff like that. But basically, in Sicily, it was a small little island, so it used to get taken over all the times, and that's how the mafia used to start. It was taken over by the French. People came in, Spain, different people. It was a protection thing. They protected each other. They stood together for something. Well, later on, as it went on, and when they didn't get invaded no more, then they started saying, "Well, we're protecting you, and we're going to get something for it," and that's how it started.
Right. Okay. So it started off as a self-defense. It's interesting. That happens a lot with self-defense movements. Like you hear about it with drug cartels in Mexico. It's like, you know what? We're sick of being pushed around by the cartels. We're going to start our own citizen militia where we get armed and we don't let people push us around because the police are corrupt. And then it's like 2, 3, 5 years later, those are the people who are kidnapping and extorting people. And it's like, wait, weren't you supposed to be here protecting us? Well, we got to earn a living somehow. We pushed out the cartels. There's a power vacuum. So now we're the bad. It just like, it really does. You trade hats really quickly after that.
Well, what's the old phrase? Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
the cartels got started because they didn't allow drugs in this country, just like prohibition got started. You made the mafia rich by saying nobody could drink anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's like telling
Yeah.
everybody no. There's a law in Connecticut. After 2 o'clock in the morning, you can't have sex with your wife. That's a real
Is
law.
that
It's on the
true?
books.
I
Yep.
got to Google that later.
Yeah, you
That's
check that
crazy.
out. But they never got rid of it. Now, who would ever even put something like that in the laws? But there's so many stupid laws, nobody knows them all.
I'm Googling this right now. Hold on.
Okay, yeah,
I got to look this up. This is insane.
yeah.
Cohabitation law. No, let me see. You know what? This isn't going to come too easily.
No.
Connecticut lawyers who are listening to this right now, tell us whether or not that's an urban legend, because that is very strange. I've never heard
Yeah.
that, but that doesn't mean it. I mean, there are weirder laws on the books.
Oh,
There's all
God, yeah.
kinds of stuff. If you look up weird laws, like you can't have chickens out on Sunday morning before noon in Kentucky, and you're like, what? And it's like because they were disturbing church services or something like that. There's a reason for it that doesn't make any sense anymore, but they don't bother to get rid of it because it's not enforced. That's
Well,
funny.
when I was in the box and I was locked up for 15 months in the hole, why only 5 days a week you can get 45 minutes outside? Why Saturday and Sunday you can't? I mean, why? Why?
Yeah, they want you to relax on the weekend. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So
No.
okay. So your father was killed under was it Vinny the Chin? Was he the head of the Genovese family at that point?
Yes, I think he was still around then. My father's boss was Barney Belamo, and Barney is still very powerful to this day. Smart as a whip. I guess when I say a good guy, I guess he's a good guy. But he's very powerful, very well liked. He can go anywhere in the world or in the country and be known.
Wow. Yeah. It's initiated. So this is Liborio Bellomo. Is that his official?
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. His father was a soldier close to Fat Tony Salerno, American mobster. Yeah, initiated in 1977. How is he alive and not in jail? I mean, that's rare to be around for that
Oh,
long.
he was in jail for a long time.
Okay.
Matter of fact, he's one of the youngest guys to ever be made too, but he's very smart and but a good guy. You know, like as far as a wise guy would be concerned. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
65 now. I mean, you just never hear about that. A lot of these guys are gone or they're in prison or whatever. So, how did the FBI then convince you to become an informant? You know, it's a far cry from okay, your father's dead. We don't really know who did it. To now you're working for the FBI.
So I was doing my time. I got arrested on extortion and gun possession charges. I guess I was facing maybe, I don't know. I think my lawyer said she can get me like 3 or 4 years or whatever it was. Maybe it could have been longer. I don't know. And I was willing to take the deal and stuff. I was fighting in court. So I got moved from the prison I was in to MCC. When I was in MCC, uh, uh, the boss of the Lucchese family came to me, which was Vicar Musso. He
Okay,
came to
wait,
me and
say that again.
I don't know if you heard of Victor Musso.
No,
He's
no,
the
but
boss of
I
the
don't know that.
Lucchese family. I was good friends with him.
Okay.
And he said to me, he says, listen, the FBI is going to come see you. I don't even know how he knew, but he knew.
Yeah, how did he know that? That's bizarre.
And
Yeah,
we're in
well,
we're in MCC. So he says to me, he says, you tell them, you listen to what they got to say. You sit there, you keep quiet. He says, and you tell them this. I'd love to help you, but I'm not even in a position to help myself. I never forget that. Anyway, I get pulled into the bullpen, and all of a sudden now the marshals come and get me, and they take me to this hallway, and I'm like, "Where's the courtroom?" You know? And all of a sudden, two FBI agents are waiting at the bottom of the end of the hall for me. He goes, "Okay, you're gonna go with them now," and they left. Well, I go into a room. Who's there? Is the AUSA? Uh,
is that U.S. attorney, assistant U.S.
yes,
attorney? Okay,
that's
so
correct.
federal
Uh,
prosecutor essentially.
yes. So Benjamin Rosenberg, I think his name was back then, and another FBI agent, and the two that brought me in, and my attorney. So I says, "You guys mind if I talk to my attorney for a minute?" And so they left the room, and I said, "What's going on?" I said, "I told you I'm not going to cooperate with these people." He says, "Well, look, Joe," he says, "they just called me at a spur of the moment." He says, "Listen to what they got to say. You got nothing better to do. You're here."
Yeah, well, yeah, you're not really, you don't
Yeah.
really have another meeting conflicting with this one exactly.
It's exactly. He's like, "What do you got going? That's better than his."
Yeah.
Anyway, I said, "Okay." They called him back in, and they said, "Look, Joe." They started talking to me a little bit about this, that, like, hey, this is the kind of life you want. This, what, that kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden, they showed me photos. They took out these photos about this thick.
So several inches high. Yeah,
Yeah, and they
stacked high.
said, took a look at. So I says, okay. So they put the handcuffs in front of me, and I started looking through the photos, and of course, I noticed it's the cemetery where my parents are buried. As I'm looking at it, I see them digging up my father's body.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and they exhumed the body after 3 months. I never knew this. Nobody told me at home. And that's the first time I saw my father. Oh, it was over a year.
Hmm.
His Yeah, and so his I guess his he had decay on his face and stuff, and
Take your time. Yeah, take your time.
he had a V cut shape in his chest, and another stitch is going down here, and they exhumed him, and they tried to look for some bullet wounds and stuff like that, uh, but they didn't find any, supposedly. And I put the photos down. I asked them to excuse me for a minute. I hung out my lawyer. They came back in and they said to me, "Joe, we have reason to believe that the wise guys killed your father." They said, "We have information that 3 men went down there with under your last name. Your father always met him in a mall, never took him back to his villa, but this particular time he did. We were going to arrest him that weekend, and we found him dead. And that's what made me think that the wise guys killed him, because they did know where he was in a way, because uh, my father did move from one place to another, had to get a different phone number. So they knew that too. So, they always know something. Uh, so that was the first time I saw my dad. And then they said, "Is this the kind of life you want? Or do you want to find out who killed him?"
So, pardon this might be a morbid question, so feel free to tell me you don't want to answer it. But if they didn't find any bullet wounds, what do they think happened to him? Was he stabbed or was he poisoned or something like that, or what?
Later on, I went to my uncle, who my father learned from, and he didn't exactly tell me. either, but he told me this. He said Joseph, and that my family always called me Joseph. But anyway, he says to me, he says, those are to cover up the stab wounds. That
I see.
it was a fake autopsy.
Oh, I see. So they right. So I don't know much about embalming, but I assume if there's a lot of damage, they probably cut out the damaged skin and then sew the other skin up over it so it looks a little bit better.
Right. And they never performed the full autopsy. Matter of fact, the guy that does it in California is pretty famous. He actually came there. They got him. At least that's what the FBI handler told me, that they got him over there. But my uncle was there, and he didn't want them to I guess cut my father up and do all of that stuff to him because he was still intact pretty much, except he just had a lot of decay on his face and stuff like that.
I guess it's probably not for appearance. It's probably because if they're going to embalm somebody, they can't really do it if there's a lot of open wounds on them. So they have to make sure that those are closed. Because otherwise, sorry, I know we're talking about your father here. I'm just going to shut up now.
No,
but,
that's okay.
yeah.
I understand.
I'm just thinking out loud here for the audience because it was a little confusing. So I assume at that point you're like, well, I want revenge on these pricks who killed my dad, right?
Well, I'm not really that much of a mean person, but I would love to find out who killed my father, but I don't have it in me to kill somebody, like, unless it's, what I mean? I'm not a killer. I mean, I'll defend myself, of course. I'm capable of doing that pretty good, thank God. Not good.
Yeah.
But I was angry. Yeah, I was
Yeah,
angry.
I bet.
The first thing you say is, fuck the mafia. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And that's what I did. I thought about it. I told him, let me think about it. Because I always learned that from a sit down. You never agree to anything right there and then. You always say, I'll think about that.
I got to think about it.
Or in legal terms, it's I'll take that under advisement.
Yeah. Is that because you don't want to make an emotional decision in the moment and then have to, because you can't change your mind, right? So,
no, once you make a decision at the sit downs, you got to stick to it. But you definitely want to still go over it. And if you're unsure of something, you always never agree to that. And then you could, and basically a lot of times if you don't agree to it, it'll never happen. You really never come to an agreement on it. You'll do what you want anyway, and they'll do what they want.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's sort of a good negotiation tactic right there. Like you don't want to say, I'll take it right away, unless it's really in your favor. Then I guess you jump on it.
Yeah, and you can't act like you want it so bad either.
Sure.
It's like going to buy a brand new car. Oh my God, I love that car. You don't tell that to the salesman. Say, yeah, it's all right. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
What do you?
I'm on the fence.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's if you're ever going to buy a car, the last thing you want to do is tell the salesman you couldn't find it anywhere else and you love it and you can't wait to drive it out.
Exactly, because he's going to club you right over the head.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. All right. So these guys, what surprises me here is these gangsters kill your father. They murder your father, and then they just expect you to be okay with it. Like because you're still in the mafia, right? Do they not think like, oh, Joe's going to be upset if we do this?
Well, remember one thing too. I'm not really in the mafia. I got what they call papers with them. You know what that means? Okay,
no.
So papers means it's almost like I'm supposed to be with a certain family because my father was. So I have to prove myself a little bit, but yet we give him a little leeway because we knew his dad, type of thing. So, but because I was doing my own loan sharking and I wasn't really working for anybody else, I guess they would view you as what they call an up and comer. And of course I paid respects to people and and things like that. So I was connected, if you want to say it that way. That's about the easiest way for regular people to know it. So they do expect you to be okay with it because this is the life you chose. And it's almost like a policeman or a fireman. If they get killed on a job, it's sad, but at the same time, that was their job.
I get that, but it's also like they didn't get killed. If a police officer gets shot in the line of duty, he doesn't get shot by another cop who says, I just didn't like that guy and I wanted his job, right? That's different, I guess.
That's dramatically different. Yeah, that's apples and oranges. But because that's why I said a lot of people. You talked about the young generation, glamourifying this life, like and all of this stuff. Well, what's the glamourify? Your best friends. Let's say you wake up, your best friend might kill you that day. The FBI might be waiting for you at 6 o'clock in the morning at your house. I have to make sure I earn money, so this way the boss doesn't want to say, where is all the glamour? What? Because I got a new car. Why? Because some people look like they respect me. Because maybe I go into a restaurant, I eat for nothing. You know what I mean? You know,
Yeah.
what is the real thing? But everybody's looking for something to, and it's enticing to think you have people that are behind you.
I guess it makes sense if you grow up with nothing and also you don't get respect. It's like then that's all you care about. But if you have other options, this is not really a good avenue for you to go
That's
down.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
My father had nothing when he was growing up, and so when he was able to get money like he did, he would spend $10,000 on clothes. He'd come home with all shoes to match his color of his pants and sport jackets and things. He was so proud of it. He would change like 2 or 3 times a day and just bring all his clothes to the dry cleaners. He was spending about $300-400 a week on clothes in the dry cleaners.
My God,
Yeah,
that's insane.
yep.
But
And
keep
then
that dry cleaner in good. I mean, that's a good business. Be a mafia dry cleaner or a dry cleaner in a mob neighborhood is probably a pretty good business.
without a
Yeah.
doubt, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Jeez.
but that's how it started for me to join the Team America, if you want to say it that way.
Okay. So you become a confidential informant, which is essentially exactly what it sounds like, right? The FBI is coming to you. You're still essentially in the mob, informing on things that are happening. And I've got some notes here. You informed about corrections officers smuggling drugs into prison because you were already in prison. So you told them, hey, these are the guys that they're getting the drugs from. You know, whenever this corrections officer is on duty, you can easily get, I don't know, pills or whatever it is. And also, it looks like there was a plot to release an inmate for a $50,000 bribe, which I don't even know how that works because corrections officers aren't supposed to be able to release inmates, but I guess that's part of the racket, right?
Well, correctional officers aren't supposed to do a lot of things, but
Yeah.
they still
They're
killed
not
that
supposed to bring
kid.
drugs in. Yeah.
They still killed Epstein, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, hey, who knows? I don't know. I don't have any information about that.
Me neither. But I was in the box. I was pretty surprised when I heard this thing that two COs at the same time fell asleep and the cameras were off. You know,
Yeah. That sounds mafia-esque now when you put it like that, right?
well, you think about it too. Like I said, I wouldn't say this if I didn't know what was going on in the box. I knew what the hole was like. They had cameras there. And usually it was a guy that was having a problem in one of his cells. Well, what do you think happens? All the COs get together, they go there, they turn off the cameras themselves so that this way you can't see what's going on when they want to get the guy out of his cell. Yeah. So, it just looks,
Yeah.
it looks funny, it looks very
It looks,
funny.
yeah. I mean, look, even if he did kill himself, no one's going to believe that because it's just too insane that the cameras were off and the COs were asleep. I mean, that doesn't make any
Exactly.
sense.
Exactly. So, not to get off the subject, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying those things are a little bit hard to believe.
Yeah, no, for sure. Or even they just went in there and said, "You have 10 minutes to kill yourself right now, or we're gonna do it." And then he's like, "Well, I know how this
Right.
ends, right?"
Well,
Yeah.
exactly. And going back to how the guy would have escaped from prison. I mean, most security guards, what do they make? Maybe $30,000 a year, especially back in the
Probably.
90s, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Mhm.
So if he had some connections, however, he knew how to get to the security guard and offer him $50,000.
Yeah,
Some people will take it.
yeah, of course. I mean, especially if you don't have to pull the trigger yourself, all you have to do is say you were asleep, and then you get fired. Big
There
deal.
you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not the end of the world.
Nah, not for 100 grand, not for 3 or 5 years of your annual salary before
Correct.
taxes, right? I suppose.
Yeah.
And you can rationalize something like that pretty easily too. Like, so this POS guy is gonna. All I have to do is not stop him from killing himself, and I get 5 years of money. And he's not. It's not. This is no saint. I mean, this is a terrible person, Epstein. So whatever. Good riddance.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can see that
Exactly.
rationalization.
Who's
working
really
pretty
going to
well.
care? Exactly.
No.
Who's going to care about him? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, the security guards, those were things that were going on while I was away. And also, I solved a few unsolved murders for them as well.
Yeah, I have notes on that. It says informed on Genevieve's crime family shooters, aka contract killers, who they were. By the way, how much? Asking for a friend, of course. How much does it cost to have somebody killed? Generally, or journalistic purposes only. But I've always wondered that.
If you were going to do a mob contract for a hit, it shouldn't be less than $100,000.
And
Yeah.
that's if I'm going after a gangster, or if I'm just going after like some neighbor that's really pissing me off, or something like that.
Yeah, usually a contract hit is $100,000 to start. It's the way it
Okay.
is. But if you're a gangster and another gangster, the head gangster gives you the order, you don't get paid anything. You just
Right, yeah.
yeah.
No, that makes sense. I was just thinking like, what if somebody is just they're picking on my kid and they're really horrible. They're selling drugs at school. Nobody will do anything. The father, is threatening me, and I'm like, this is somebody that's got to be taken care of. I guess at that point, you don't have to kill that person. You can just threaten them with credible violence, right?
Exactly. There's some things that could happen to them. Somebody gets taught. Listen. There's not everybody in the mafia is tough, but there are really some tough guys and scary people too. There was a guy like Tommy Karate. His real last name I think it was Pantera. He was scary. He'd kill you. And if he came to your house and told you something, you should listen to him. Just like they had Greg Scarpa back in those days. He was very scary too. If he told you something, you better listen. Then there's just some people that will just know right away. There was a guy, Frankie Salerno. He was a tough guy. He was in what they call the Purple Gang. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
Yeah, isn't that the Jewish mafia out of Detroit?
No, that was the Purple Gang was in the Bronx in New York.
I think it's a different Purple Gang. I swear there's a Purple Gang out of Detroit. Hold on,
it probably was.
Purple Gang. Yeah, also known as the Sugar House Gang, was a criminal mob of bootleggers and hijackers, primarily Jewish, in 1910 to 1932. We're probably talking about something totally different. Yeah.
Without a doubt. Even Elvis Presley sang about the Purple Gang when he was doing a Jailhouse Rock song. The whole rhythm section was a Purple Gang. But this Purple Gang was in the Bronx, and they were connected, a lot of them, too. Well, this one particular guy drove around with a dead body in his trunk for about 3 days. I guess he was fooling around with his girlfriend or something like that. But he killed him, showed everybody he had him in a trunk. But this guy came to my house. And when I looked into his eyes, he had no soul. And I knew for a fact that he wasn't even bigger than me, muscular than me, nothing. But he was definitely somebody that would just kill you without, and just probably eat the sandwich at the same time.
Yeah, just a sociopath with no feelings. Yeah, that is terrifying. You meet people like that, and you're just like, you see people look at you in a certain way, and you're like, this is a really bad person. And you talk to guys that have been in prison. I've done some work in prison, some volunteer work, and there's a lot of really like nice guys, especially in the programs that I'm in, and they're scared of these other guys because they're like, there's people in here, man, that you wouldn't believe. And I'm like, yeah, imagine your cellmate is one of these guys, and he's like, I want the top bunk. You're like, all right, no problem.
Yeah, listen, I've seen people that never lifted a weight in their entire life could probably lift you up the floor with one hand. I've seen guys that never knew how to fight or anything, but their fingers, they will, some people just, and if they're a bad person, they grow up rough.
Yeah.
You can't beat them, no matter what you do. I've seen people get hit with baseball bats, and the guy shrugged it off and took the bat and beat the guy with it.
Jeez. Yeah. Not an environment that I would survive well in, for sure, man.
No, it's not this
guy.
Yeah, it's rough.
So one of the FBI documents says it says fingered, which is funny because they use this exact term in an FBI document. Fingered 51 people, according to it, which is pointed out that informed on these particular guys and had them put away, I guess is what that means. Which is funny because you think the FBI would have all these. The other parts of these documents have all these technical legal terms, and then other parts look like they were transcripts of a conversation between two guys who live on a block. Like, it's very funny to read these documents.
Yeah, I probably the whole time I was working undercover, which was like 18 years, I probably gave them a lot of information.
18 years is a long-ass time. Yeah. Before we get into that, there's a lot of redacted stuff in the documents. Did the FBI redact that, or did you redact that before you sent it to me? The FBI did it, right?
That's correct, yes.
Do you know what that is? Is it mostly just people's names?
It could be names, because their whole keys are, they say, oh, it's an ongoing investigation. And that's their key to get out of saying anything or having to show you anything. Unless you were a judge, I guess. So it's probably some names, locations, maybe,
Yeah, okay, because it didn't seem like it actually seemed incredibly easy to understand, even with the redacted stuff. Like, it would be like Joe Barone on, and then there'd be like a date missing, went to go see, and then it's clearly a name missing, and then it says, and they were going to engage in, and it lists all this explicit criminal behavior. So I'm like, well, they're not hiding that part. I mean, that part's pretty. So it's like, if you were involved in it, you know exactly what they're talking about. But if you're just me reading it, you're like, oh, who knows who that is.
It sucks, but that's what they got to do, I guess. You know?
No, it makes sense. Look, I didn't have any problem. They did a pretty fair job redacting it because it was really easy for me to find out everything I needed to know other than the name of the person who was informing on it or whatever, other than you. Hey, if you like what you're hearing and seeing, check out the Jordan Harbinger Show podcast feed. There's a lot more just like this. You can find the Jordan Harbinger Show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, back to the show. And the documents are pretty effusive about your ability to provide good, quality, timely information on a lot of pretty serious crimes and people in La Cosa Nostra over, like you said, 18 years. It's got to be really stressful to do that, though. I mean, were you worried about getting caught? You have to be at some point.
Whether I was in public or even alone, I always had to portray the man I was, be the man I was portraying myself to be. I had nightmares at night, even back then. I guess I couldn't have no relationship, really, somebody I really loved or cared about, because I was always afraid for them. I knew what I was doing myself, but even being in it, though, I was not thinking of it. Only sometimes when I used to get those calls for late night meetings or meet me in 15 minutes, I thought they found out who I was, and I thought I was going to be killed. Matter of fact, I had one guy, the captain of the family I was in, he called me and says, "Can you meet me in 20 minutes at my cousin's house?" His name is Dominic Sicali. So I said, "Well, can you make it?" He said 15 minutes. I said, "Could you make it 20?" He said, "Yeah, but be there in 20." So I said, "Okay." So sure enough, I called up the FBI guy and I told him, I said, "Look, I got a call down. I don't know what's going to happen." So he took the call. He said, "Make sure you call me immediately and get back home. I don't care what time it is. I'll be waiting for you." I said, "Okay," but I was scared. I went to the house, and of course his cousin said, "What's going on?" My cousin called me, told me, "You got to meet him here. You all right?" And she knew who he was. He's a killer. I says, "Yeah, I guess so." So him and his father come in, and they're kind of cold to me a little bit. I said hello, and then we left. So now I'm getting into the car with them.
Oh, man.
And yeah, and
I'm getting goosebumps.
Yeah, so wait, hold on. I'm getting in the back seat, and I said, "This is kind of unusual. They're letting me get in the back seats." I said, "Well, maybe they're going to take me someplace and not shoot me in the car."
Right, because otherwise you'd be in the front seat so they could shoot you in the back of the head. All right, I've seen a lot of Mafia movies. You can tell now. I'm starting to get the hang of it.
There you go. But meanwhile, he had this kid's baby's chair in there too. And I said, "No, he's not going to kill me in the car with the baby seat. This is what I'm doing to say to myself. Yeah, the car seat. This way I can try to keep myself calm." So on a road that was supposed to be doing 30 miles an hour, he's doing 80. And on the way there, I'm talking to him. I said, "So what's up, guys? Everything okay? Are we all right?" He said, "You don't know where we're going, Joe?" I said, "No, what's up? Everything good? I mean, what's up?" And I'm pretending, like, what are we doing? We got to do something? I thought we had to do something bad. I'm trying to think. He said, "You don't know where we're going, huh, Joe?" I said, "Nah." All right, this is whatever. So they said, "Hey, Joe, what's the matter? You thought you were going to get whacked? We're going to go to this place." They took me to a strip bar.
So they said just messing with you at this point.
Yeah. They were laughing in the car to themselves. They were like almost tears coming out of it. "What's the matter, Joe? You thought?" I said, "No, I just thought we had to do some work. I was ready to go to," I said, "I was going to change my shirt or something. I was making up any excuse."
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you, Jordan, I'm not going to lie to you. I was afraid.
Well, yeah, of course you were. And also, why did they do that? That's so freaking mean.
That's not the only time they did it to me. They did it to me a couple of times, and they used to get a kick at it. But you see, this is how they test you. Every time.
It's a test, right?
It's a test. Look, he asked me for $20,000. On a spur of the moment, I had to give him $20,000. Now, do you think the FBI was going to give me my $20,000 back? Or if I asked them I need $20,000 real quick, do you have it? It would have took weeks to get the permission just to get it. Good thing I had $20,000 in my safe. Okay, back then, thank God, I was doing good. I gave him the $20,000. He said, "I'll give you back to you in 2 weeks." He paid me back in 3 weeks. But I could have been out that money. What am I supposed to do?
Okay, so what if you just don't have the money? Then what? I mean, they can't be mad if you don't have $20,000 under your friggin' mattress, right?
And they always think you're lying to them.
Oh, they think you're lying, okay.
And I'm going to tell you about the test part now, about the $20,000.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much that I gave them the $20,000. When I got the money back, I think all they did was change the rubber bands on the money. I think it was the same money. They just didn't even need it.
Yeah.
Nope. Well, come on, these guys are getting money all kinds of hand and foot. You gonna need my $20,000? I knew it was a test, but I had no choice. I had to pass it.
What's the test? Will he give us the money? Is that the test?
Yep.
Just will he?
Yep.
Okay. Or maybe they know you have it somewhere, and so if you say I don't have it, then you're lying.
When you go to kill somebody, there's always somebody with you. Because if you don't kill the guy, they know you're not serious. If you kill somebody, your commitment is solid now with them.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, they know you committed a crime. Yeah, yeah.
That's right. So if I give them the money, if I'm beating somebody up for them, If I'm like we went to a bar once, me and the captain, and one of the other guys was just fooling around, trying to grab him a little bit. Well, I jumped on the other guy and I grabbed him. I said, "Oh," and the captain started laughing, and he said, "See, can't touch me." Yes, you know what I mean, and that shows that you're in. Matter of fact, we went to Sue's Rendezvous. It was a bar in Mount Vernon, a strip bar. Well, after
It
so we're all
sounds like a
hanging out.
strip bar. It sounds like a
Yeah.
strip. Sue's Rendezvous definitely sounds like a strip bar.
So all the guys, we met some of the other guys there and stuff like that. So now the captain goes to the bathroom, and I looked for a second around, and I saw nobody go with him to the men's room. Well, I went to the men's room after I walked after him, because that's what you're supposed to do. You're never supposed to let the captain walk by himself.
Right, yeah, too dangerous for him.
And so little things like that, he knew I was close to him, and he knew I was with him.
I read these this is from your documents as well. Like Lucchese family associate Bruno Facciola was executed in August 1990 with a dead. Did I mispronounce the name? Is that why you're laughing?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What? How
That's
would he
okay.
say it?
I'm trying to say, what was the name that you were saying?
Bruno Facciola or something like
Okay.
that. It's Facciola.
Okay. Yes, it's pronounced differently, I think, but that's okay.
I
like
don't know
it, though.
Italian. Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Facciola.
I'm Italian. I don't really
I
know
mean,
so much myself.
Facciola maybe, but that's definitely got to be wrong. Executed in August 1990 with a dead canary stuffed in his mouth as a sign that he was an informer and a warning to other mobsters. So that would be on my mind like every day, like in the car, like, all right, I'd be listening for canaries and like, you got a bird in here? What do you need that for?
Yeah, exactly. Usually the canary's probably dead before they got you. You know what I
That
mean?
makes sense. Yeah. Otherwise, flying around the car. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, they have their own little tricks to show you, who's doing this. It was like when they killed Willie Boy Johnson. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
No.
Well, Willie Boy Johnson was very close to, I think he was a childhood friend of John Gotti's. And later on, he became an informant. And he said to them, to the AUSA, the assistant U.S. attorney, that I'll give you information, John, but I'll never testify against them. Well, they wanted him to testify against them, and he said no. Well, what did the U.S. attorney did? They put it out that he was a snitch.
Oh, man.
Now, if you remember, Willie Boy Johnson was found and shot, I don't know how many, multiple times. They killed him, of course. Yeah. But they outed him as a snitch. They actually had him killed because he wouldn't cooperate with them anymore.
Wow,
And
so the
you can
FBI
look that
played
up.
the mob. Yeah, the FBI. So the FBI played him and then played the mob into killing him because it's almost like the FBI is like another crime family at that point.
Well, the FBI are a real crime family. They listen. It was almost like say I informed on the mob, but now it's like I'm a FBI whistleblower, because you see, I did work for the mob and I did work for the FBI. And to be honest with you, I would rather have worked and stayed with the Mafia, because at least I would have been killed. I wouldn't have had everything taken away from me, my livelihood, my status in my community. Family members don't talk to me. I always have to look over my shoulder for the rest of my life. Maybe there's no real hit against me like Sammy the Bull, like had people wanting to kill him. But if somebody wants to come out of the woodwork and say, hey, isn't that Joe Barone? Wait, I saw him. And then they want to make a name for themselves, they'll just shoot me.
Yeah.
So it's not, yeah. There's a certain level of betrayal that you don't go beyond. It's not like somebody, like my girlfriend went around my best friend. Okay, it hurts, but eventually one day I'll get over it. I can live with it. This here, I have to live with for the rest of my entire life,
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, look, it reminds me, the late night meetup that you mentioned earlier, it sounds like, I assume you've seen Donnie Brasco, right? Where Al Pacino, he gets the call, his wife comes out of the shower and he goes, I got to go meet somebody. I got to go see. Oh, so late? And he's like, yeah, no problem. You're so beautiful. I'll see you later. And then after she goes back in the bathroom to dry her hair or whatever, he takes off his watch. He takes off his ring. He takes out his lighter. He takes out his wallet, and he puts it all in a drawer that he leaves open for her. And we'll add the scene in the show notes because it's like an iconic scene from the movie. And Donnie Brasco, who was, I think, played by Johnny Depp or whatever, right, in the movie, he was an informant for 6 years. You were an informant for 18 years. So you had 3 times more, I don't know, informing than Donnie Brasco. And I think you did a lot more damage to La Cosa Nostra, to the Mafia, than he did, probably, too.
Probably to some degree, yes. you know, and don't forget too, I always kept a certain amount of distance. Look, the the FBI had actually given me permission to kill a wise guy.
Really? I didn't even know they
Yeah.
could do that.
Well, they don't, like, in other words, you don't they don't just go, okay, listen, Joe, kill this guy because we don't like him, or kill him because whatever. I had gotten a contract to kill a guy in the mafia, uh, and the reason why, of course, I'd kill him is because he liked me or whatever, and he would have got together with me and that kind of thing. Well, of course, I informed my handler at the time, Vincent Prizzuti, and well, I said to him, I says, what am I going to do? I mean, you know, basically, he said, look, Joe, he says, you got to do, this is how they tell you to kill him without telling you to kill him. You got to do what you got to do to protect yourself, but just make sure after it's done, you call me and tell me right away so this way we can protect you.
How are they going to? By the way, I just killed someone. Oh, thanks for letting me know. I'll
Yeah.
file the appropriate paperwork. What?
Yeah, exactly. So this is how they do it. But he essentially not only once but twice gave it to me. Once in front of another FBI agent, and the first time we were alone, him and I sitting in a diner. Yep. And I said to myself, thank God the guy got arrested before it came to fruition. That, you know, a meeting that I had to go kill him.
Yeah, no kidding, because that would have put you between a rock and a hard place. It is interesting in the FBI docs. There's all this. It's kind of a fun list, right? So you're allowed to engage in what they call otherwise illegal activity, which it's like, no, it's still illegal. It's definitely, they're not changing the fact that it's illegal, but they're giving you like a judge is kind of like, all right, we're not going to prosecute you if you do the following, and it's source has been associated with the Genovese and Banana La Cosa Nostra members in the past. As part of FBI tasking and in a continuing effort to maintain close access to them, redacted, and other LCN members, source can be expected to engage in criminal conversations regarding collection of debts, extortion, racketeering, gambling, monopoly of trade, loan sharking, attempted murder / conspiracy, money laundering, income tax violations, the current nature and structure of various La Cosa Nostra families, and conspiracy to control and influence legitimate businesses and industry. That's a lot. You had a pretty wide berth of, a large permission slip there.
Well, at my trial, the agent said, they said, what wasn't he allowed to do? He says, I mean, because he says, I would have put more in there if I could have, you know what I mean? They just couldn't think of anything else. When I had gotten rearrested in 2009, and later trying to help the other FBI agents that actually stole me from the one I was working with, which I call that's what they call informant shopping, which we'll get into that too. Basically, they wanted to give me money to put out in the street. I said, okay. I said, well, what happens when I can't collect it? What am I supposed to do? And they didn't want to answer me.
Right, because you already knew the answer to that, and they didn't want to make it explicit. Yeah.
Of course. They always, you know, this way they could say, we didn't tell them to do that, you know?
I didn't tell him to break anybody's legs. Well, how was he supposed to get the money back? I don't know. I'm not a gangster. I'm an FBI agent. Come on. Yeah.
Well, you think that all the stuff that, what do you call who they used to call the Grim Reaper. You think that he worked with the FBI for all the years he did and all the stuff that he was doing? They turned a blind eye to it. They didn't care.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, when I was prepping this, they were like, "Oh, you know, they get paid." And I'm looking at these FBI. You did not do this for the money. The FBI docs show you getting paid like $2,500 here, $3,500 there, and you had to, in order to get that, it was like, well, he flew from here to here, redacted. Yeah. To go to this event, redacted. So you're probably flying from New York to Florida for some birthday party. You're not profiting off of this at all. Barely.
I put out my own money and they just reimbursed me. I found out later on, they were allowed me $100,000 a year. So if you think about 18 years, that's $1.8 million.
Yeah, it's not actually.
Yeah,
it's not compared to what you could have made loan sharking in the Mafia or whatever. It's nothing.
One guy testified against the Hells Angels, and he got $1 million. He didn't do hardly any undercover work. That was it. He didn't even work even a year. I mean, they gave John Gotti, this guy, his junior, one of his friends who was a stockbroker. They paid him like, I think $2,500 a week or $5,000 a week for a whole year just to get information on John Jr.
Yeah, I think look, it sounds good when you break it down by week, but then when you think, okay, and now I can't live a normal life for the rest of my life, it doesn't really, the value of that starts to drop pretty quickly.
Well, sure. I mean, the whole thing is, if I had a chunk of money, like the money I was talking about, or my lawsuit from the government, it's not
Mhm.
like I hit the lotto and I could say, yeah, I'm going to party now. No, I'm going to live kind of quietly, as much seclusive I could get, off, not, and not be known to, as much as at least as I can,
Yeah, of course. No, of course. That totally makes sense. By the way, there's more from the document. I'm going to read a big chunk here. So it says, more importantly, source, after being close to members of three LCN, so La Cosa Nostra, aka Mafia, so I'll just say LCN families, is able to report on squabbles between members of that family, individuals who are likely to cooperate with the government, and plans by various LCN members to flee the country, hide assets, make plans to usurp power from within their group, and determine various meeting places for individuals. Additional highlights of sources reporting include the conspirators and perpetrators of LCN-related murders, the reason for the murders, and the purpose of other LCN members leaving areas familiar to them and formerly under their control. Source also identified members of loan sharking operations within the purview of the LCN and induction of new LCN members, and the power in the families and or territories. Oh, and the power that each of them has within the ranks of their particular LCN families and or territories. Source was successful in accomplishing this and relating said information covering portions of the Bonanno, Genovese, and Lucchese LCN. Is it Lucchese or Lucchese? Lucchese,
It's
right?
Lucchese, yes.
Lucchese LCN. More specific reporting pursuant to this informant is attached to this electronic communication. So they write somewhat formally, but then they don't in the second
Yeah.
half of the document, which is really funny. It's like two different writers. So they basically outline all this illegal stuff you're allowed to do. And I have this checklist here that I won't read, but there's all these things where it looks like you initial this, or maybe the FBI agent initialed this. It's like the authorization is limited to 90 days. Here's the conduct on the list I read that you're able to do. But then it says, under no circumstances may you participate in an act of violence, participate in an act that obstructs justice, et cetera, et cetera. It's ridiculous,
Well,
kind of.
this is the funny thing. When I was at my trial, so they said, well, I had to sign off every 30 days or 90 days or whatever. They would bring the paper to me, and well, so after the 90 days was up, if I didn't get in touch with the guy before the 90 days, was I supposed to stop hanging around the gangsters and not talk to
Yeah.
anybody, tell them I went away for a few days and
Yeah,
I
it
can't
doesn't make
talk to you
sense.
no more? Yeah, they didn't care. But they cared when I went to trial, of course, and that was
Yeah.
important. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
It's like a
it's
technical hang up that's like a trap for you almost.
it's almost like what you seen in The Devil's Advocate, that movie with Al Pacino, when he says, it's the goof of all times. Look, but don't touch. Touch, but don't taste. How are you supposed to do things half-assed? You can't. It's impossible. So if we're fighting in the club and my two guys are fighting that I'm with over there and somebody's going to jump on their back, I'm supposed to just stand there and watch? I have to jump in and fight with them.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Even if I wasn't a fighter or anything, I would have to do something. So, and what am I supposed to get in trouble because of that?
Yeah, it says there's a one of the little initials here. It says, if the CI, the confidential informant, is or are asked to participate in any such prohibited conduct, or
Yeah.
if CI learns of plans to engage in such conduct, CI must immediately report the matter to handling agent. Participating in this conduct could subject CI to full criminal prosecution. So it's like, it doesn't make any sense, right? Hey, we're going to go right now. Like, you better get here right now. What are we doing? Oh, we're going to go kill so-and-so. Hold on, I got to make a quick phone call. Never
Right.
going to happen.
It's almost like the casinos. You got a chance to win millions of dollars, but those machines are all rigged against you. It's a fluke if you win. So it's the same thing here. They have everything lined up for them so that they always can abolish themselves. It's almost like to give themselves extra immunity, like they really need it.
Sure. Yeah, they just can't be looking. It can't look like they encouraged criminal conduct. Otherwise, it's entrapment. But they have to let you do it while saying, "Well, we never told him." Like you said before, we never told him to go beat that guy up. He just did it. Well, I called you after. Well, you called me after. I couldn't do anything. It was afterwards, right? It's like
Exactly.
it's all that. So, do you basically then, if they do say, "Yeah, we're going to go down to that pizza place. He's making a bunch of money. We got to get our piece." Do you then have to basically call your FBI handler and go, "Okay, well, the plan is we're going to Comet Pizza and we're going to get a chunk of his revenues, and I'm going to record the whole conversation." Is that okay?
Yeah, and I never wore a wire either all those
Oh, you
years.
didn't? Okay.
No, I never had to.
Too dangerous, I guess, probably
It
too.
was definitely that, and also my memory was really sharp right on. I never gave them any information that was wrong ever. But if, like, in other words, we talked about it in the afternoon and we're going to hit them up tomorrow or that night, and I went home first, of course, then I would call up the guy Vinny, my handler, and say, listen, we got a problem. We're going to go down there. I don't know what I'm going to have to do, but this is what's up. And that would be it. I'd tell him.
And then that's enough, right? He's like, all right, talk
That's
to me
it.
tomorrow after you're done.
That's it. Is that what could he do?
Yeah, I suppose he can't tell you not to do it because you can't call the boss and go, you know what, I'm not feeling this one. Yeah.
Well, here it is. A spur of the moment. I didn't know what happened. I got called by the captain and my skipper at that time, and then another wise guy, and I'm in the back seat. Well, this guy's father got smacked by somebody in the street. Some guy smacked his father. Well, we got in the car and we were waiting for the guy at his house to come home. They had a lighter fluid and they had the match. They wanted me to hold him. They're going to put lighter fluid on. They're going to light him on fire. Thank God the guy never showed.
They were like the guy on fire. Holy smokes.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
No pun intended.
And
yeah.
I just got that. Thanks, George.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the truth. So
wow.
Thank God the guy
so
never
you're
showed
lucky
up.
he never showed up. Yeah, because you would have had to light someone on fire. Oh my God, how horrible is that? That's horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. The guy had the lighter fluid there. He's like I said, was making they don't want you to know, but they want the whole town to know that this is what happens. Anybody touches my family.
Yeah. Yeah. So they got to make a spectacle of the whole thing.
Correct. Yep.
When it says infiltration of La Cosa Nostra, LCN, into legitimate businesses, of course, they're talking about like union rackets and stuff like that. Which, are there any sort of really famous businesses or name brands that the mafia has infiltrated that people might be like, wow, really? In that business?
Well, they had, what do you call it? The Gambino family, I believe they had Frank Perdue, or I think it was, I don't know if it was the Gambino family. They had that Perdue chicken.
Oh, okay.
Back in those days, yeah. But yeah, there's probably some famous ones that I don't know about. But if they can get their hands in there somehow, they would. Like the stock market, a lot of them are involved in that stuff too.
Sure, yeah, insider trading.
Car dealerships, they're involved in car dealerships. They own a piece of it.
Huh. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Small businesses are probably easier to. You can't have mafia involvement in Procter and Gamble. It's like too big of an organization.
Yeah, sometimes it's like that. Yeah. You know what it is they have to justify the $1 million home they're living in, where they get the money, so they have to show something,
Right, yeah. I mean, that's the age-old story of like, oh yeah, I'm in the import-export business or waste disposal, and it's like they're laundering money, and it's like, oh, wow, there's a lot of money in recycling old televisions suddenly.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Or they used to buy the laundromats because it was a cash business. Yeah. And then you get the guy out there clocking how many people go in for 6 months or a year, and then say, well, if you only had these many people, how'd you make this much money? Well, what is that? He couldn't do his laundry twice? What I mean?
Yeah, that's right. Well, when he went in there, he spent $400 doing his laundry. I mean, he had a lot of dirty whites.
Exactly.
Did you weigh the laundry when he went in, officer? No, I didn't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they have to justify it,
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I see also that you prevented a murder of a U.S. attorney and a sitting judge, which that is brazen. So they were going to murder a prosecutor and a judge.
Oh, without a doubt.
Oh my God.
They were as good as dead. Now the judge, his name was Judge Garifas, and I was with him in his court. I actually seen him when I was in the hole doing my time. Mm-hmm. I actually wrote him a letter. Letting him know that I was the guy who was directly responsible for saving his life, because I knew the guy that was going to kill him. And even though he said in the papers that he wasn't scared, everybody says that you're not scared until the guy comes there and gets you, that you're scared then. But I liked the judge. He was a good guy. And I knew when they were going to kill him. I knew the guy that was going to kill him, especially the other guy was the prosecutor for that case too as well.
Yeah,
and I gave them the information. They stopped it.
Wow. How do you stop it? You just tell them to be extra careful, or you go after the guy that's going to do it somehow and put him and you arrest him for something?
The guy that was actually going to do it was, this goes back to some of the stuff you were reading. He was going to go and leave to Italy. He was in hiding, and he was going to go leave to Italy right after he killed him. So I told them about the guy who was going to do it. I told him pretty much everything I knew. And it happened to be that the guy's own cousin was out actually cooperating too. I didn't even know that. I was working with him and never knew he was cooperating too, because they knew exactly where he was hiding. So they went to him, they got him, and they arrested him before he can kill everybody.
Wow. All
Yeah.
right. I mean, there's so much here. The documents were quite fascinating. A little repetitive in parts, but it wasn't meant to
Yeah.
be a novel. So,
Right.
um,
Hey.
so how did it all come crashing down? You know, how did this all end up? You know, you were informing, they love you. The documents are like, he's the best informant we've ever had, and the payment should reflect that. And then suddenly they're like, nah, you're under arrest. What the hell?
So what happened was my the guy that I worked with for 18 years, of course, he retired after 20 years. So his whole career pretty much was built on things that we did. So we had a nice beer, a couple slices of pizza and stuff, and he gave me to another guy, Mike Trombetta, was another agent that I was going to be working with. I should have actually walked away, but I didn't know. I thought I couldn't. I should have. Now knowing what I know now. So that was in, I think, in maybe October, November, somewhere around that time. But 3 months after he retired, they arrested me and saying that I was there was a murder for hire plot, which was not going to happen. Might have been even 6 weeks after he retired instead of 3 months. I think
Oh,
when
wow.
I met him, yeah, so it's like 6 weeks after he retired, and they arrested me saying I was going to kill this guy, because there was another informant that I got to hire to kill somebody. Like he informed on me, which later on got proven at my trial that it was never going to happen. See, I hung around with a few different people. Some of the people I reported to the FBI that were actual gangsters. This guy that wasn't a gangster, he just was like a guy that I would use and keep my street cred up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I give him money here and there, so he was happy to hang around with me. I gave him $1,000 to go look at the job, gave him an address and everything like that. But of course, nothing was going to come of it, and nothing did. Like I said, if I was going to get all this kind of money, $500,000, I don't need this guy to help me kill him. You know what I mean? So then later on, that's what they did. They used that as a guise to get me because they knew who I was. They saw my record. Matter of fact, at my trial, they said, well, what did Mr. Barone do? The judge asked, Judge Buckwalsh. And they said, well, he gave some license plates and everything. They said, is that his file? The file was this thick.
Yeah. So it's like a foot thick. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're like, they're trying to say like, that's a lot of license plates. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? In 18 years. Anyway, P.S. They only did that so that they could steal me from Mike Trombetta to go with them. That's where the informant shopping comes in. And the only time I ever heard that informant shopping phrase, I think it was in the cover of Time Life magazine. It's where other agent steals you from another agent because they're more powerful and they want to use you to go with them. But these agents were nothing like the 18 years away I operated. They came up with shit like you hear on TV that nobody would believe. They actually made me make a phone call to a gangster, and he says, I know I'm probably being recorded now and everything like that. Yeah. I said, I don't never talk on the phone with them. Now you want me to talk to them on the phone? Well, you got to prove yourself. I said, the 18 years that I worked is not proof enough. And then I asked them this. I says, I saved the judge's life. Okay. Doesn't that mean anything to you? And you know what he said? This guy, Agent Gator was his name. He went, nope. Just like that to me. If they really thought that I was a bad guy and I was going to kill somebody or whatever the case, or hire somebody to kill somebody, and all the years that I worked, you mean to tell me all the crimes and murders I solved, all the people that got arrested because of information I gave or whatever, you don't think they could have said, we don't want to work with you anymore, Joe. We're going to give you a pass. But if we ever hear anything again, we're coming down on you with everything.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Isn't it worth it?
Yeah.
I mean, how much can you put on anybody's life? Can I say that you, Jordan, your life's only worth $20 million, $50 million? You can't probably even put a price on your own life. You know what I mean?
wouldn't try. No. No.
There's my question. You just answered it.
It's pretty incredible. I mean, they say terminated for unauthorized criminal conduct. That was the murder for hire plot. But yeah, some of the things they were asking you to do in the court documents, they were saying, oh, call this random high level people over the phone and discuss illegal activity, which like, it almost seems like they didn't even think this one through, right? Or it's such a bad plan that either they have no experience and they didn't know what they were doing, or they knew you would say no to that because it's the dumbest thing in the world. Like, what if you never talk to somebody over the phone and you never talk to them about illegal activity, and one day you're like, hey, Jordan, boss, what's going on with all that cocaine smuggling we were going to do? And I'm like, what are you talking about? No, remember we were going to smuggle a bunch of cocaine from Mexico to the United States? And what did they want me to be like? Oh, yeah, I forgot all about that. Meet me at the docks at midnight. I've got all the cocaine with me. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's so harebrained that I don't even understand why they would ask you to do that. Like, it almost seems like I'm
Well,
missing a piece of the puzzle.
even when after I got arrested, I was gone for like I guess 4 days. People were actually looking for me. Matter of fact, police went to my house. There was my friends were there, and they asked the police, "What the hell you doing here?" I mean, I was going. You know what the FBI told me to tell them? Just tell your friends you went away, you met some girl, and you went to Atlantic City and had hung out with her for a few days. I said I never do that. It's like, people. You hang around if you got a friend for a couple of years, and you'll know right away when he's up, down, feeling
Yeah.
good, feeling bad, because you know him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, none of it makes
You,
sense. Yeah.
exactly. You might not be able to say what's wrong, but you know something's off. Same thing with me. So now I asked him. I said I never talk to people on the phone, and it's all on the transcripts. How he knew I was talking, and the feds were monitoring me, and that exposed me right there. So they let me out for 2 weeks, and they gave me a piece of paper to show that it was just they arrested me on like a suspicion or whatever. And they wanted me to show this around to people like as if I wasn't cooperating. I said, "You killed my whole reputation. It's dead."
Yeah.
And then they wanted me to start going to gangsters and stuff, and I was not going to do that. I didn't want to go to and be any people no more because I knew what was going to happen.
Yeah,
So
they were
I
going to bungle it.
I
Yeah.
hired this wise guy attorney, George Santangelo, because I still wanted to try to keep a little something going.
Mm-hmm.
Well, once I hired him, that's it. They arrested me again because he's a wise guy attorney, and they knew I wasn't going to do anything with them anymore, and that was it. They arrested me, and that's it. They charged me.
And they threw you in the shoe, so the special housing unit for 18 months. This is like protective custody, right?
What they did was they exposed me in the papers that I was cooperating. They did that purposely so that this way that would give the permission that would give the BOP, the Bureau of Prisons, permission to throw me in the box for my own protection. But that was to torture me. That was to say like, hey, fuck you. You know what I mean? You fucked us. We're gonna get you, and that's what they did. And in the meantime, I was actually in prison 19 months total, 15 months in the box. But in that 15 months, I almost died. I had they took me to the hospital for like a few days for my heart, but I also contracted MRSA staph. They actually operated on me 3 times. The first time was no anesthesia. They made me bite on a stick.
What the hell?
They cut big chunks of mass out of me
What? With no.
in the prison
What
in
the hell?
MDC.
That's insane. That's horrible.
Yeah,
That's horrifying. Even,
yeah.
I mean, that's like some Middle Ages shit right there. That doesn't mean that's
Well,
crazy.
I got the scars to prove it, and they also like they gave me the injections later on, like the other two surgeries that they did in MDC, but the anesthesia wore off right away, and they still were cutting it out. What are you gonna do? Yeah,
Oh my God. Oh my
yeah.
goodness. And we know that this is flimsy because they later give you, the government later files something called nolle prosequi, which means they don't want to, no longer willing to prosecute, essentially. It's a
Well, they
flimsy
did that
case.
after. Yeah, they
Yeah.
did that after. I see what happens is I'm in the law books now. Joe Barone with my attorney Jose Muniz. We're in the law books to win an illegal search and seizure, which is almost impossible. If you know anything about the federal system, it's almost impossible to win a illegal search and seizure. Well, now I'm in the law books, and once I got that and I took the wind out of their sails right there, and then once I took the stand, they never thought that I would, but because I had nothing to tell that was nothing wrong or a lie. Matter of fact, I actually faced the jury when I took the stand. I didn't look at the prosecutor. I didn't look at I wanted the jury to see the truth in my eyes, then that's how I was found not guilty.
Interestingly, Preet Bharara signs this, right? So you know who Preet Bharara is? He's kind of a well-known guy, especially now.
Yeah,
He's the one who signed your
he's
nolle
more political
prosequi, I think.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's more political now. Yeah, well,
sure.
because he knew there was nothing there. Listen, they didn't even have a warrant to arrest me. They called it in. They said, "Listen, we think we want to get him," and half the reason was, and the judge even asked them, "Why did you take him in the house and leave him in there so long? Why didn't you take him back to headquarters?" They said they did a protective sweep, that they found a gun and this and that. Everything was lies. It's unbelievable how you think that the FBI, and let's face it, I'll tell you a quick story. It's very brief. Most wise guys, when I was younger, they would say, "Hey, you got to see. I went to court and trial. They put somebody up on a stand. I never even met them, and I was like, get out of here, really? How could they do this?" And then you walk away going, "This guy's crazy. They can't. They
Yeah,
must have. He must have known him, because you think the wise guy's lying too a
he's
little bit,
lying.
right?
Yeah, sure.
But he's not. He's telling the truth. Listen, in this country, you are guilty till proven innocent. Because if I was innocent till proven guilty, why did I still stay in jail? Why couldn't I go home? See, you have to prove yourself innocent. Once you get arrested, it's your job to get yourself out of the papers. It's your job to prove yourself that you didn't do nothing wrong. And that's why I took the stand, because nobody knows the story better than me. And that's why I said, if the FBI can do this to a guy like me, how come it says the United States of America against Joseph Barone?
Right. Yeah.
I'm one guy.
Yeah. Federal prosecution, man, is extremely scary because they have unlimited resources to prosecute this case, and you got to pay for the defense.
And they do not fight fair. If they could do this to a guy like me, it's worse than betrayal. I mean, they just ruined my whole entire life. For what? What did I do?
Right. You're in no man's land now, right? Because your FBI connections, like, retired / they're not backing you anymore. And then, of course, the mob is like, wait, you were a snitch for 18 years? So,
well, they wouldn't help me. I mean, it's
course.
almost like this. I got a lawsuit against one of my lawyers. It's called the Lawyers Fund for Collection, protective custody, protecting you from lawyer-client protection. It's a lawyers fund, they call it.
Okay.
Well, I've been fighting them since 2012, but they don't want to give me. It's $100,000. That's all it is. But the judge, here, I even wrote a note. The judge actually wrote the facts and created a false instrument for filing. And that's why I'm doing this case pro se, because no lawyer would ever stick up for me and say that the judge is wrong, or because the judge is actually committing a felony by doing this. What he did was he did that so he could support the ruling that he wanted to give. He didn't want to rule in my favor. He's ruling with them. That's why the courts are corrupt too. It's almost like you have no choice. That's why the conviction rate for the FBI is 95%. Basically, I was very surprised when my judge actually asked these people, what did he do? And then they showed, like you said, a foot thick of what I did. Is she looked at it in camera. She took all my records and looked at it. And then when she came out the next time I had to go to court, she actually treated me a lot differently, because she knew that what I was saying was not untrue.
Yeah,
Matter of fact, she winked at me when I won my trial.
Wow. Yeah, but she went to bat for you, knowing that what you had done for the government, probably.
Hey, here you go. The AUSA lied about the fact that I helped to save the judge's life, and she pulled him to the sidebar, and she was yelling at him in the courtroom. And then he finally had to go to the jury and say, okay, Mr. Barone did give information that did help save a federal judge's life.
Yeah, because she probably said, if you don't want a mistrial, you better correct yourself right now, because you're going to perjure yourself in court, or you're in trouble acting like that if he's a witness in the case.
The only thing that they have a hard time of is a conspiracy. First of all, conspiracy law is really illegal anyway. Okay,
right.
That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
That's why a jury can't really say if it was guilty or not guilty. They're hung up on that most of the time. So that's why she even said to the prosecutor, "You couldn't find them guilty on the charges. You're going to find them guilty on conspiracy. Give me a break." You know what I mean? That's why they say you could indict a ham sandwich. That's how stupid the conspiracy law is.
Yeah. By the way, I misspoke earlier. Of course, the AUSA, the assistant U.S. attorney, can't. They're not a witness in the case. Sorry, they're prosecuting the case. I'm getting my coffee's wearing off here.
Sorry about that.
Yes. No, it's that's on me. I should know that. I've got experience in this area. So, look, what are you doing for security these days? You moved to an undisclosed location. I remember early I was like, oh, I'll mail you a microphone. And I think it was your friend who was doing the initial interface was like, no, we'll just get that ourselves. And I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. You probably don't want to send me an address where to reach you. And then I was like, oh, I'll send him to a studio. It's like, no, we're going to just buy the thing you want us to get off Amazon and go from there. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Well, the FBI, they know where I am. I guess I wound up getting a ticket or whatever, and they know where I am, and they know where I am. And that's what makes it even more scarier, because at one time they did offer me the witness protection program, more than once, actually. But would you take the antidote from the same people who gave you the poison?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I figured, let me take my chances out here. Don't get me wrong, Jordan. I'm not going to tell you I'm the toughest guy you're ever going to meet. I'm not going to.
Sure.
I can get killed like anybody else and all of that stuff too. And I'm not going to tell you that I'm not afraid, or that it's not on my mind, or that I still don't wake up with nightmares. Okay, which I do. But I figured I'm better off taking my own chances, and whatever's in store for me, it's what God wants anyway. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, also, when Sammy the Bull went into witness protection, he came out a few years later because he was like, "I'm getting old and I can't see my family and I can't do anything," and it's like, what the hell, And if he can come out and live a normal rest of his life, and there was a lot of hits on him, then in theory, you should be all right too. But yeah, when I go out to dinner with Sammy and other people, it's like we kind of go to different places and look at the door and everything. He still does all that. I got to face the door because
Oh
same
yeah,
reason as you. Some 18-year-old idiot's going to be like, I killed Sammy the Bull. I'm tough. And
yeah.
they're going to be like, why the hell you kill a 74-year-old man, you moron?
So
But that's too late for him.
there's some things that you can't get away from. I'll always face the door. I'll always, I won't fix a flat tire if it's on the side of the street. You know what I mean? Yeah. Even the FBI is still after me. I forgot to tell you this part too.
Hmm.
There's a guy down here that I actually talked to on the phone from prison. He's a killer too, but he worked for the FBI as well. Do you realize that they were bugging my phone and his phone, and they still tried to get me on the hook with this guy to do bad things?
So entrapment,
Yeah,
essentially.
they
Well, it
still tried to
depends on
entrap
what it
me.
was. It depends what it was, but I read the documents. So yeah, yeah.
These people never let you go. You think I told you about my great uncle there who got shot later on in Bobby 20 years later? These people never let me go. If I was to go to court today, if they didn't have this thing called summary judgment, they didn't knock me out of court, and I went to trial, and I told the people at the jury, let them make up their minds what they want to do, okay, with my life, because I'll tell them the truth like I'm telling you, and I told them at my first trial. They do not want you to be successful. The same reason why the lawyers fund, they called up the prosecutors, all these people, the FBI, because they all work together, the lawyers. They said, don't pay that guy. And that's what they're doing. They don't want to give me $100,000. That's all it is. Ain't a lot of money. But to me, it's a lot of money right now. But they do it they all work hand in hand. They're all part of the same system. And to be honest with you, it's all corrupt. You fight till you fight and till you got nothing left. And thank God I'm healthy enough and I'm still fighting.
So you don't have any like utility bills in your name and phone bills and all that stuff. What about
No.
I, pardon me if you can't answer this, just tell me. But like, what about seeing your family? Do they just meet you somewhere
My
neutral?
family doesn't want to talk to me. No, they're afraid.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yes, they're afraid. As a matter of fact, when I first got pinched, one of my cousins reached out to me on email. I guess he heard the story, and he reached out to me through my then wife on her email, and then his family told him don't talk to him. He's my
Yeah.
second cousin.
Wow. Jeez.
Yeah.
And do you use like VPN software to mask your internet addresses and stuff like that on your phone and all that stuff, or you don't worry
Only
about
so
that?
much I could. Yeah, only so much I could do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Certain things I don't. I'm not too tech savvy. I'm just going by only thing I know.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I guess if you're not that worried about that particular thing, I mean, I'm after this, by the way, I'm just going to be, for anyone listening, I'm going to purge all the records that I have and all the servers that I use to connect to you just so that your internet address, your IP address is not saved somewhere, cached somewhere. Well, that's for your protection and also for mine. Because if somebody's like, we want to see your computer, I'm like, hey, I already scrambled all that stuff 5 minutes after the interview because I didn't want to knock on my door either. Um, if you had to do this all over again, what would you do differently? Would you leave the mob once your father was killed, or would you maybe just like go work at the post office like you said, or what would you change?
It was. It was. It's kind of like in one way I ask myself a lot of times because I did save a lot of lives, but is it really my job to save a life? I don't know. Maybe I was put there for a reason, maybe I wasn't. But if I thought about it hard, like you're asking me, I would have just took my time and took my chances the way I was living, and that was it. Um, like I said, I was if I would have joined the post office, I would have probably never even have been arrested the first time.
Well, yeah, for what? I mean,
Yeah,
nothing.
exactly.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have had loan shark money for money and stuff because I never worked really. I mean, the few jobs that I had were nothing. But a serious job and I do call it serious. I think the post office is a good entity for
Yeah,
the
it's a
United
real
States.
career, of course. Yeah.
Exactly. I would have just did that and just been happy and get married and whatever,
Yeah.
live a
Yeah. I
normal
mean,
life.
did you feel like you even had a choice but to join the mob, given that your dad was in it when you were born and your mom came from there as well? Did you even have a choice?
You might I might have had some choice, but you always want to please your father for some reason. You always want to. I don't understand it. Like it's my mother would tell me if I went to a wedding or something, I got dressed up. I always go to see my mother before I went to the wedding, and she'd give me the big smile. I thought I looked handsome. Oh, you look good. I went there thinking I was better looking than the groom and everybody that was there. If my father would have gave me the recognition that I wanted or seeked like everybody else would, so the few things that I did, yeah, but he was disappointed in me too. A lot of things too. You never could really please him.
Sure. Well, yeah. Look, that makes sense. You're always looking to try and please your parents, but yet, even though you followed him into the life, it still wasn't enough. I mean, it's not like you went and applied, right? You didn't seek this out. You were born into it. You didn't have much of a say in the matter. You had more 2020 hindsight. You had a say in the matter, but now, like back then, it's like, what do you mean you're not going to do this? I'm setting the table for you. Like you got it easy. You don't even have to do all the BS to get in. I'm setting you up already. And, everyone you knew and loved was connected to organized crime. And I'm highlighting that because a lot of people are going to go, so what? They're going to kill some mobster guy who's, he's probably scumbag. He went and killed people. But it's very different when you think about the choices that you think you have at a given time. When I do work in prisons, people go, man, these guys, when your father's killed by somebody when you're 8 years old, your mom has 4 other kids and can't support you, sends you to live with a cousin, and the cousin's in a gang, and you're 8, 9, and then they kill your cousin, and they say they're going to come after you. Of course you get a gun when you're 12. Of course you maybe go and get them first. It's different than a kid who's grows up in the suburbs like me with a mom who's a teacher and a dad who's an auto worker, and then I get into selling drugs. That's because I would do that because I was a little shit, not because I had no other choice, right? Then it's a different set of circumstances.
Well, it's a huge difference. I mean, look, the bottom line is you do what you can when you're in. Almost everybody lives in the moment. Nobody's trying to project. Like somebody might say to you, "Oh, what are you going to do in 10 years from now?"
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Who's
I don't
thinking
know.
10 years ahead? Look,
Especially young
if
people.
I exactly, if I was smart, I would have invested the money I had, and I would have been okay right now. But
Yeah.
I was living for a day by day and didn't know if I was going to make it from the next day to the next day. You never know what's going to happen to you. So, it's a little hard. It's nice if you had like some people that are multimillionaires and their family has something aside for them later on. And, look, you got movie stars that are paying for their kids to get educations they never even worked for. So, the world is a very small place. And not everybody is what they always seem.
Yeah, look, and I bring this up not to excuse criminal behavior, but to sort of illustrate the idea that some people make choices that we would also make if we were in the same set of circumstances. It's just really easy for us to say, well, he was a criminal and he did that. Well, okay, but why? You always have to zoom out on the timeline to look at the real cause of something, and it's usually not as cut and dry as it might seem.
What's the old saying? Walk a mile in my shoes first before you're able to judge me. You know
That's
what I
right.
mean?
That's right.
You know, I don't know what life you had. I've seen some things you did. You've been through some things yourself as well. How could I tell you how to grieve for somebody or how long you're supposed to deal with it? It's not up to me. It's up to the individual. And everybody's different.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Like I said, I'm going to take some quick security measures to make sure that your IP address and things like that aren't stored on any of the servers we're using to make the recording. But yeah, I appreciate the candor and appreciate you reaching out. Like I said, I thought it was a prank when I first got the email because I was like, oh yeah, some gangster who's never talked to anybody he wants to come and talk on the Jordan Harbinger show first. Like, what do you think I am? But here we are.
I do have I want to say thank you to you too, first of all. And I do have a website, joebarone.io, that people can go on to.
Yeah, we'll
check
link
that
to it
out
in the
as
show
well.
notes. Yeah, we'll link to that
Yeah.
in the show notes.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
And hopefully something will, hopefully I'll be okay.
Yeah, hopefully, and I wish you the best of luck with that. And of course,
Thank you, Jordan.
Once again, thank you for coming on and being so open and candid. It wasn't this
Thanks,
was pretty
man.
unvarnished, and I appreciate that.
No problem. Thank you. Thanks for having me.